Hello viewers and welcome to another chapter of reading. This is my plushie Prisma Iris. She's going to be joining us for today's chapter. So without further ado, let's get started, shall we? Chapter 20. Hagrid's Tale. Harry sprinted up to the boys' dormitory to fetch his invisibility cloak and the Marauder's map from his trunk. He was so quick that he and Ron were ready to leave at least 5 minutes before Hermione hurried back down from the girls' dormitories, wearing a scarf, gloves, and one of her own knobbly elf hats. You know, I would like to know why she doesn't have this as like a side business. Like, I can just see her knitting Hogwarts students to be this type of stuff to keep them warm during the autumns and winters. I know I would like a Hermione knitted hat right now. What about you guys? It's cold out there, she said defensively as Ron clicked his tongue impatiently. And it is cold, so stay warm, everybody. It's going to get colder. They crept through the portrait hole and covered themselves hastily in the cloak. Ron had grown so much now he needed to crouch to prevent his feet showing. Then, moving slowly and cautiously, they proceeded down the many staircases, pausing at intervals to check the map for signs of Philip or Mrs. Norris. They were lucky. They saw nobody but nearly headless Nick, who was gliding along absent-mindedly, humming something that sounded horribly like Weasley's or King. Oh, I sure hope he's not actually humming that tune. They crept across the entrance hall and then out into the silent, snowy grounds. With a giant leap of his heart, Harry saw the little golden squares of light ahead and smoke coiling up from Hagrid's chimney. He set off a quick march, the other two jostling and bumping along behind him, and they crunched excitedly through the thickening snow until at last they reached the wooden front door, where Harry raised his fist and knocked 3 times. The dog started barking frantically inside. Hagrid, it's us! Harry called through the keyhole. Should have known, said a gruff voice. They beamed at one another under the cloak. They could tell Hagrid's voice was pleased. Been all 3 seconds. Out of the way, Faye. Out of the way, you dozy dog. The bolt was drawn back. The door creaked open. And Hagrid's head appeared in the gap. Hermione screamed, which I will not attempt. Merlin's bad. Keep it down, said Hagrid hastily, staring widely over their heads. Under that cloak, guy. Get him. I'm sorry. Hermione gasped as the 3 of them squeezed past Hagrid into the house and pulled the cloak off themselves so he could see them. Just, Hagrid. It's nothing, said Hagrid hastily, shutting the door behind them and hurrying to close all curtains. But Hermione continued to gaze up at him in horror. Hagrid's hair was matted with congealed blood, and his left eye had been reduced to a puffy slit amid a mass of purple and black bruises. There were many cuts on his face and hands, some of them still bleeding, and he was moving gingerly, which made Harry suspect broken ribs. It was obvious that he only just got home. A thick black traveling cloak lay over the Over the back of a chair and a haversack large enough to carry several small children leaned against the wall inside the door. Hagrid himself, twice the size of a normal man and 3 times as broad, was now limping over to the fire and placing a copper kettle over it. "What happened to you?" Harry demanded while Fane danced around them all, trying to lick their faces. I'm sure many dog owners can relate to that. I'm a cat owner, so I don't really know. But I imagine you guys who are dog owners can relate. "Told you, nothing," said Hagrid firmly. "Want a cuppa?" "Yes, please, Hagrid. Yes, please." I'll probably make one after this chapter, though. "Come off it." Oh, probably. "Come off it," said Ron. "When the right's tight." "Telling you I'm fine," said Hagrid, straightening up and turning to beam them all but wincing. "Blimey, it's good to see you three again. Had good summers, did you?" "Hagrid, you've been attacked," said Ron. "Well, the last time it's nothing." "Would you say it was nothing if one of us turned up with a pound of mince instead of a vice?" Ron demanded. Good point, Ron. Good point. "You ought to go and see Madame Pomfrey, Hagrid," said Hermione anxiously. "Some of those cuts look nasty." "Be dealing with it, all right," said Hagrid repressively. He walked across the enormous wooden table that stood in the middle of his cabin and twitched aside a tea towel that had been lying on it. Underneath was a raw, bloody, green-tinged steak, slightly larger than the average car tire. I don't. I don't even want to know. "You're not going to eat that, are you, Hagrid?" said Ron, leaning in for a closer. "It looks poisonous." "It's supposed to look like that. It's dragonite," Hagrid said. "And I didn't get it to eat." Well, yeah, I'd be surprised if he did, considering he temporarily owned a dragon. He picked up the steak and swapped it over the left side of his face. Greenish blood trickled down onto his beard, and he gave a soft moan of satisfaction. I know it's black and white, but hold on. I know it's black and white, but hold on. I know it's black and white, but there's somewhat of a visual for you. Since I have done, thank goodness. Mouth butter helps with the stinging, you know. "So are you going to tell us what's happened to you?" Harry asked. "Can't have it. Top secret. One of my jobs was to tell you that." "Did the giants beat you up, Hagrid?" asked Hermione quietly. Hagrid's fingers slipped on the dragon's steak, and it slid squelchily onto his chest. "Giants," said Hagrid, catching the steak before it reached his belt and slapping it back over his face. "Who said anything about giants? Who you been talking to? Who told you who said what I've been, eh?" "We guessed," said Hermione apologetically. "Oh, you did you?" said Hagrid, fixing her sternly with the eye that was not hidden by the steak. "It was kind of obvious," said Ron. Harry nodded. Hagrid glared at them, then snorted, threw the steak onto the table again, and strode back to the kettle, which was now whistling. Apparently I must have put in tea whistles. Never known kids like you 3 foot no more than you oughta. Actually, kids understand a lot more than we give them credit for. Just saying, because there are psychological studies that show that. Moving forth, he muttered, splashing boiling water into 3 of his bucket-shaped mugs. I mean, I wouldn't say no to that much tea if it were an actual bucket full. Probably keep me occupied for, what, a week? Maybe less? Okay, I really love my tea, okay? Moving forth. I'm not complimenting you either. No, say Simcoe. It's a ferret. But his beard twitched. So, you've been to look for giants? Said Harry, grinning as he sat down at the table. Hagrid set tea in front of each of them, sat down, picked up his steak again, and slapped it back over his face. You're right, he grunted. I have. And you found them, said Hermione in a hushed voice. Well, they're not that difficult to find, to be honest, said Hagrid. Pretty big, see? Where are they? Said Ron. Mountains, said Hagrid unhelpfully. So why don't muggles they do? Said Hagrid darkly. Only dead desert. Always put down to mountaineering accidents, aren't they? He adjusted the steak and noodle so that it covered the worst of the bruising. Come on, Hagrid. Tell us what you've been up to, said Ron. Tell us about being attacked by the giants, and Harry can tell you about being attacked by the Dementors. Hagrid choked in his mug and dropped his steak at the same time. A large quantity of spit, tea, and dragon blood was sprayed over the table as Hagrid coughed and spluttered, with the steak sliding. A soft splat onto the floor. What do you mean, attacked by Dementors? Growled Hagrid. Didn't you know? Hermione asked him wide-eyed. I don't know anything has been happening since I left. I was on a secret mission, wasn't I? Didn't want Alice following me all over the place, running Dementors. You're not serious? Yeah, I am. They turned up in Little Winning and attacked my cousin and I. Then the Ministry of Magic expelled me. What? And I had to go to a hearing and everything. But tell us about the giants first. You were expelled? Tell us about your summer and I'll tell you about mine. Harry glared at him through his one open eye. Harry looked right back, an expression of innocent determination on his face. Okay, considering James the first James and Lily the first James, that could be an interesting combination. I'm just saying. Like, alright. Said Hagrid in a resigned voice. He bent down and tugged the dragon steak out of Fane's mouth. Oh, Hagrid, it's not, I didn't... Hermione began, but Hagrid had already slapped the meat back over his swollen eye. He took another fortifying gulp of tea and then said, well, you startled right after tormented. Madame Maxime went with you then? Hermione interjected. Yeah, that's right, said Hagrid, and a softened expression appeared on the few inches of face that were not obscured by beard or green steak. You know, it was just the pair of us, and I'll tell you this. She's not afraid of roughing it, Olympia. You know, she's a fine, well-dressed woman, and knowing where we was going, I wondered how she'd feel about clambering over boulders and sleeping in caves and that. She never complained once. You knew where you were going? Harry asked. You knew where the giants were? Well, Dumbledore knew and he told us, said Hagrid. Are they hidden? Asked Ron. Is it a secret where they are? Not really, said Hagrid, shaking his shaggy head. It's just that most wizards aren't bothered where they are. So it's a good long way away. But where they are very difficult to get to. For humans anyway. So we needed Dumbledore's instructions. Took us about a month to get there. A month? Said Ron as though he had never heard of it. Journey lasted such a ridiculously long time. But why couldn't you just grab a porky or something? There was an odd expression in Hagrid's unobscured eye as he squinted at Ron. It was almost pitying. I'm being watched, Ron, he said gruffly. What do you mean? You don't understand, said Hagrid. The minister's been keeping an eye on Dumbledore and anyone they reckon's in league with him in. We know about that, said Harry quickly, keen to hear the rest of Hagrid's story. We know about the minister watching Dumbledore. So you couldn't use magic to get there? Asked Ron, looking thunderstruck. You know where this is headed. You've been thunderstruck. Do-do-do-do. Thunderstruck. Do-do-do-do. You had to act like muggles all the way? Well, not exactly all the way, said Hagrid occasionally. We just had to be careful, because the lump and I, we stuck out a bit. Ron made a stifled noise somewhere between a snort and a sniff, then hastily took a gulp of tea. We were not hard to follow. We was pretending we was going on holiday together. So we got into France and we made like we were being headed for Royal Olympic Schools, because we knew we was being held by someone from the ministry. We had to go slow, because they're not really supposed to use magic, and we knew the ministry would be looking for a reason to turn us in. But we managed to give the book telling us to slip around about Dijon. Oh, Dijon, said Hermione excited. I've been on holiday. Did you see? And fun little tidbit about Emma Watson. She was born in Paris, France. Did you know that? Moving forth. She fell silent at the look on Ron's face. We chanced a bit of magic after that. It wasn't a bad journey. Ran into a couple of mad trolls on the Polish border. And I had a slight disagreement with the vampire in a pub in Minsk. But apart from that, it could have been a lot smoother. If memory serves, Minsk is in Russia. Moving forth. And then we reached the place and we started checking up the demands, looking for signs of them. We had to lay off the magic once we got near them. Partly because they don't like wizards and they didn't want to put their backs up too soon. And partly because Dumbledore had warned us, you know who was bound to be to the giants and all. Said it was odds he'd sent a messenger off to them already. Told us to be very careful drawing attention to ourselves so we got near in case there were Death Eaters around. Hagrid paused for a long draught of tea. Come on, said Harry urgently. Found them, said Hagrid boldly. We went over where you were not, and there they were, right underneath us. The fire spreading below and huge shadows. It was like watching bits of mutton moving. Bits of the mutton moving. How big are they? Said Ron in a hushed voice. About 20 feet, said Hagrid casually. Some of the bigger ones might have been 25. And how many were they? And how many were there? Asked Harry. I reckon about 70 or 80. Is that all? Said Hermione. Yep, said Hagrid sadly. 80 left. And there was ones. Must have been in 100 different tribes all over the world. But of course they've been dying out for ages. Wizards cured a few. Ended a few, of course. But mostly they ended each other. Now they're dying out faster than ever. Not made to live bunched up together like that. Dumbledore says it's all fault. It was the wizards who forced them to go and made them live a good long way from us, and they had no choice but to stick together for their own protection. So, said Harry, you saw them and then what? Well, we waited till morning. Didn't want to go up sneaking out on them in the dark for our own safety, said Hagrid. About 3 in the morning, they fell asleep, and just where they were sitting, we didn't dare sleep. For one thing, we wanted to make sure none of them woke up and came where we were. For another, the snowman was unbelievable, causing an avalanche near morning. Anyway, once it was light, we went down to see him. Just like that, said Ron, looking awestruck. You just walked right into a giant camp. Well, Dumbledore taught us how to do it, said Hagrid. Give the girl gifts. Show some respect, you know. Give the what gifts? Oh, the girl means the chief. How could you tell which one was the Gurg? Asked Ron. Hagrid grunted in amusement. No problem, he said. He was the biggest, the ugliest, and the laziest, sitting there waiting to be brought food by the others. The goats and such like. Name a carcass. I'd put him at 22, 23 feet, and the weight of a couple of bull elephants, skin like rhino hide and all. And you just walked up to him, said Hermione breathlessly. Well, down to him, where he was lying in the valley. There was this dip between 4 pretty high mountains, see? And beside the mountain lake, and Carcass was lying by the lake, roaring at the others to feed him and his wife. A limp and I went down the mountainside. But didn't they try to kill you when they saw you? Said Ron incredulously. It was definitely on some of their minds, said Hagrid, shrugging. But we did what Dumbledore told us to do, which was to hold our gift up high and keep our eyes on the Gurg and ignore the others. So that's what we did. The rest of them went quiet and watched us pass, and we got up to Carcass's feet. We bowed and put our present down in front of him. What do you give a giant? Said Ron eagerly. Food? Oh, Ron, we love you. Nah, we can get food all right for himself, said Hagrid. He took in magic. Giants like magic, just don't like us using it against them. Anyway, that first day we gave him a rod to Gubrathian fire. Hermione said wow softly. Wow. But Harry and Ron frowned in puzzlement. A branch of everlasting fire, said Hermione irritably. You ought to know that by now. Professor Flitwick's mentioned it at least twice in class. Kind of makes you wonder if the Eternal Flame in DC is a Gubrathian fire. Moving forth. Well, anyway, said Hagrid quickly, intervening before Ron could answer back. Dumbledore bewitched this branch to burn over more, which isn't something any wizard could do. And so I let it down in the snowback Hogwarts fleet and says, a gift to the instead of okay. I'm gonna reread that because it's a bit difficult. Well, anyway, said Hagrid quickly, intervening before Ron could answer back. Dumbledore bewitched the sponge to burn evermore, which isn't something any wizard could do. So I laid it down in the snow by Crocus' feet and said, a gift to the Gurg of the Giants from Albus Dumbledore, who sends his respectful greetings. And what did Crocus say? Said Harry. Nothing, said Hagrid. Don't speak English. And this is why I always say you never know when knowing a foreign language comes in handy. You're kidding! It didn't matter, said Hagrid imperturbably. Dumbledore warned us that might happen. Crocus knew enough to yell for a couple of giants who knew our lingo, and they translated for us. And did they like the present? Said Ron. Oh yeah, I went down the storm once they understood what it was, said Hagrid, turning his dragon stake over to press the cooler side to his swollen eye. Very pleased. So then I said, Albus Dumbledore asked the Gurk to speak with his messenger when he returns tomorrow with another gift. Why couldn't you speak with him that day? Asked Hermione. Dumbledore wanted us to take it very slow, said Hagrid. Let him see we kept our promises. We'll come back tomorrow with another present, and then when we do come back with another present, gives a good impression, see? It gives them time to test out the first present and find out if it's a good one, and get him eager for more, in case there's like Crocus. Overload him with information and the kill you just to simplify things. So we bowed out of the way and went off and found ourselves a nice little cave to spend that night in. And the following morning we went back, and this time we found Crocus sitting up waiting for us. All eager. And you talked to him? Oh yeah. First we presented him with a nice battle helmet. Goblin made it indestructible, you know? And then we sat down and we talked. What did he say? Not much, said Hagrid. Listened mostly, but they were good size. He heard it Dumbledore. He heard he argued against the killing of the last giant from Britain. Crocus seemed to be quite interested in what Dumbledore had to say, and a few of the others, especially the ones who had some English, they gathered round and listened too. They were hopeful when we left that day, promised to come back next day with another present. But that night it went all wrong. No, wrong place. But that night it went all wrong. What do you mean? Said Ron quickly. Well, like I said, they're not meant to live together, giants, said Hagrid sadly. Not in big groups like that. They can't help themselves. They have to kill each other every few weeks. Men fight each other and women fight each other. The remnants of the old tribes fought each other. And that's even without the squabbles over food and the best paths and sleeping spots. The thing seen is how their whole race is about finished. They day off each other. But Hagrid sighed deeply. That night a fire broke out. We saw it from the mouth of our cave looking down on the valley. Went on for hours. You wouldn't believe the noise. And then the sun came up, the snow was scarlet, and his head was lying at the bottom of the lake. Whose head? Gasped Hermione. Crocus's, said Hagrid heavily. That was a new Gorgolo math. He sighed deeply. We hadn't bargained with the new Gurg 2 days after we made friendly with the first one. We had a funny feeling Gorgolo math wouldn't be so keen to listen to us. But we had to try. We went to speak with him, said Ron incredulously. After you watched him rip up another giant's head. Of course we did, said Hagrid. We hadn't gone all that way to give up after 2 days. We went down with the next present we meant to give to Caucus. I knew it was no go before I opened my mouth. He was sitting there wearing a Caucus helmet, nearing us as we got near. It's massive. One of the biggest ones was there. Black hair with matching teeth and a necklace of bones. Human looking bones, some of them. Well, I gave it a go. Held out a roll of dragon skin. Is it a gift for the girl of the giants? Next thing I know, I was hanging upside down in there by my feet. Some of its mates had grabbed me. Marnie clapped her hands to her mouth. How did you get out of that? Asked Harry. One of Donna's limping hand, but no. Said he. She pulled out of one and did some of the fastest spellwork I've seen. What a marvelous. Hit the two holding my rotten eyes with the conjunctivitis curses, and they dropped me straight away. But we were in trouble then, because we used magic against them, and that's what giants' heads want, wizards. We had to leg him and knew there was no way he was going to be able to march into camp again. Blimey, Hagrid, said Ron quietly. So how come it's taken you so long to get home if you were only there for 3 days? We didn't leave after 3 days, said Hagrid, looking outraged. Dumbledore was relying on us. But you just said there was no way you can go back. Well, by daylight we couldn't know. We just had to rethink of it. Spent a couple of days down low in the cave and watching. And what we saw wasn't good. Did it rip off more heads? Asked Hermione, suddenly squeamish. No, said Hagrid. Wish he had. What do you mean? I mean, we soon found out he didn't object to all wizards. Just us. Death Eaters, said Harry quickly. Yep, said Hagrid darkly. Couple of them were visiting him every day, bringing gifts to the girl, and he was digging upside down. How do you know they were Death Eaters? Said Ron, because I recognized one of them. Hagrid growled. Nah, remember him? He looked like since he could beak. Maniac he is. Likes killing as much as Goggle on that. No wonder they were getting on so well. So McNurse persuaded the giants to join you-know-who, said Hermione desperately. Speaking of hippogriffs, hold your hippogriffs. I haven't finished my story yet, said Hagrid indignantly, who, considering he had not wanted to tell them anything in the first place, now seemed to be rather enjoying himself. Sometimes that's how it goes. Limp and not talked it over me and agreed. Just because the girl looked like favorite you-know-who didn't mean all of them could. I had to try to persuade some of the others. The ones who hadn't wanted to goggle at this girl. How could you tell which ones they were? Were the ones being bet into a pulp, weren't they? Said Hagrid patiently. The ones with any sense were keeping out of Goggle and Mouth's way. Hiding out in caves around the gully just like we were. So we decided to go poking around the caves by night and see if we couldn't persuade a few of them. We went poking around dark caves looking for giants, said Ron, with odd respect in his voice. Well, it wasn't the giants who worried us most. We were more said Hagrid. We were more concerned about with the Death Eaters. And Mother had told us before not to tangle with them if we could avoid it. And the trouble was they knew we were around. Speckle Matt told him about us. At night when the giants were sleeping, we wanted to be creeping into caves. McNabb and the other one were sneaking around the mountain, looking for us. I was hard to put to stop them jumping out with them, said Hagrid, the corners of his mouth lifting his laugh. She was raring to attack him. She's something when she's roused with him. Fire, you know? Expect it's the French in her. I wouldn't put it any other. I wouldn't disagree. Sometimes when people are pushed too far, they can lead to surprisingly shocking results. I know I have my fair share sometimes. And my mom especially. Oh god, you do not want to get her completely irritated and upset. Yeah. I think it runs in the family. But moving forward. Hagrid gazed misty-eyed into the fire. Hagrid wowed him 30 seconds reminisced before clearing his throat loudly. So what happened? Did you get near any of the other giants? What? Oh yeah, we did. Yeah, on the third night after Caucus was killed, we crept out of the cave and we've been hiding in and head back down into the gully, keeping our eyes skinned for the Death Eaters. Got inside a few of the caves. No go. Then about the sixth one, we found 3 giants hiding. Cave must have been cramped, said Ron. Wasn't room, just one an easel, said Hagrid. Did they attack you when they saw you? Asked Hermione. Probably would have done if they'd been in any condition, said Hagrid. But they were badly hurt, all 3 of them. Goggle and Matt's had made them unconscious. They woken up and crawled to near the shelter they could find. Anyway, one of them had a bit of English and he translated for the others. And what we had to say didn't seem to go down too badly, so we kept going back, visiting the wounded. I reckon we had about 6 or 7 convinced at one point. 6 or 7? Said Ron eagerly. Well, that's not bad. Are they coming over and still finding you know who with us? But Hermione said, What do you mean, at one point, Hagrid? Hagrid looked at her sadly. Voldemort's lot raided the caves. Ones that survived didn't know what to do with us after that. So there aren't any giants coming? Said Ron, looking disappointed. No, said Hagrid, heaving a deep sigh as he turned over his steak again and applied the core side to his face. But we did what we meant to do. We gave them Dumbledore's message and some of them heard it. I suspect some of them will remember it. Just maybe them that don't want to stay around Goggle won't move out of the mountains. There's got to be a chance they'll remember Dumbledore's friends to them. Could be they'll come. Snow was filling up the window now. Harry became aware that the knees of his robes were soaked through. Fane was drooling with his head in Harry's lap. Again, I have cats, but for those of you who are dog owners, I'm sure you relate. Hagrid, said Hermione quietly after a while. Was there any sign of, did you hear anything about your mother while you were there? Hagrid's unobscured eye rested upon her, and Hermione looked rather scared. I'm sorry. Forget it. Dead. Hagrid grunted. Died years ago. They told me. Oh, I'm really sorry, said Hermione in a very small voice. Hagrid shrugged his massive shoulders. No need, he said shortly. Can't remember much. Wasn't a great mother. Oh. Hugging Hagrid. They were silent again. Hermione glanced nervously at Harry and Ron, plainly wanting them to speak. But you still haven't explained how you got in this tight, Hagrid, Ron said, gesturing toward Hagrid's blood-stained face. Oh, why are you back so late? Said Harry. Sirius says Madame Maxime got back ages ago. Who attacked you? Said Ron. I haven't been attacked, said Hagrid apathetically. But the rest of his words were drowned in a sudden outbreak of tapping on the door. Hermione gasped. Her mug slipped through her fingers and smashed on the floor. Fang yelped. Yelp! All four of them stared at the window beside the doorway. The shadow of somebody small and squat rippled across the thin curtain. It's her, Ron whispered. Get under here, said Harry, quickly seizing the invisibility cloak and rolled it over himself and Hermione while Ron tore around under the table and dived underneath the cloak as well. Huddled together, they backed away into a corner. Fang was barking madly at the door. Hagrid looked thoroughly confused. Hagrid, hide our mugs! Hagrid seized Harry and Ron's mugs and shoved them under the cushion in Fang's basket. Fang was now leaping up at the door. Hagrid pushed him out of the way with his foot and pulled it open. Professor Umbridge was standing in the doorway wearing her green tweed cloak and a matching hat with ear flaps. Lips pursed, she leaned back as to see Hagrid's face. She barely reached his navel. That's funny. So, she said slowly and loudly as though speaking to somebody deaf. You're Hagrid, aren't you? Without waiting for an answer, she strolled into the room, her bulging eyes rolling in every direction. Get away! She snapped, waving her hand back at Fang, who bounded up to her and was tempted to lick her face. Oh, poor Fang. Hugs for him. Even though I'm more of a cat person, I cannot stand cruelty of any kind whatsoever. Whether it be discrimination, injustices, oppressions. I just can't comprehend it. I don't like it at all. I'm sure many of you understand my frustration. And I'm sure also many of you share it too. But moving forth. I don't want to be rude, said Hagrid, staring at her. Who are you? My name is Dolores Umbridge. Her eyes were sweeping the cabin. Twice they stared directly into the corner where Harry stood, sandwiched between Ron and Hermione. Dolores Umbridge, Hagrid said, sounding thoroughly confused. Thought you were one of the ministry. Don't you work with Fudge? I was senior undersecretary to the minister, yes, said Umbridge, now pacing around the cabin, taking in every detail within, from the haversack against the wall to the abandoned traveling cloak. I am now the defense against the dark gods teacher. That's brave of you, said Hagrid. There's not many that take that job anymore. And Hogwarts High Inquisitor, said Umbridge, giving no sign that she had heard him. What's that? Said Hagrid, frowning. Precisely what I was going to ask, said Umbridge, pointing at the broken shards of china on the floor that had been Hermione's mug. Oh, said Hagrid, with the most unhelpful glance toward the corner where Harry Ron and Hermione stood hidden. Oh, that was fine. You broke a mug, so I had to use this one instead. Hagrid pointed to the mug from which he had been drinking. One hand still clamped over the dragon's stake pressed to his eye. Umbridge stood facing him now, taking in every detail of his appearance instead of the cabin's. I heard voices, she said quietly. Was talking to Fine, said Hagrid stoutly. And was he talking back to you? Well, in a manner of speaking, said Hagrid, looking uncomfortable. Sometimes I find near enough human. And funny tidbit about the cat brain, it's actually similar to the human brain. Isn't that interesting? There are 3 sets of footprints in the snow leading from the castle doors to your cabin, said Umbridge sleekly. Hermione gasped. Harry clapped a hand over her mouth. Luckily, Fane was sniffing wildly around the hem of Professor Umbridge's robes, and she didn't appear to have heard. Well, I only just got back, said Hagrid, waving an enormous hand at the haversack. Maybe someone came to call her and I missed them. There are no footsteps leading away from your cabin door. Well, I don't know what that be, said Hagrid, tugging nervously at his beard again, and again glancing toward the corner where Harry, Ron, and Hermione stood, as though asking for help. Umbridge wheeled around and strode the length of the cabin, looking around carefully. She bent and peered under the bed. She opened Hagrid's cupboards. She passed within 2 inches of where Harry, Ron, and Hermione stood pressed against the wall. Harry actually pulled in his stomach as she walked by. After looking carefully inside the enormous cauldron Hagrid had used for cooking she wheeled around again and said, "What just happened to you? How did you sustain those injuries?" Hagrid hastily removed the dragon's stake from his face, which in Harry's opinion was a mistake, because the black and purple bruising all around his eye was now clearly visible, not to mention the large amount of fresh and congealed blood on his face. "Oh, I had a bit of an accident," he said lamely. "What sort of accident?" I tripped." "You tripped?" she repeated fully. "Yeah, that's right. Over a friend's broomstick. I don't fly myself. Look at the size of me. Don't reckon there's a broomstick that'll hold me. A friend of mine breeds Oxford brown horses. I don't know if you've ever seen them. Big base winged, you know. I've had a bit of ride on one of them and it was..." "Where have you been?" asked Umbridge, cutting coolly through Hagrid's babbling. "Where I've been. Been, yes," she said. "Term started no more than 2 weeks ago. Another teacher had to cover your classes. None of your colleagues have been able to give me any information as to your whereabouts. You left no address. Where have you been?" There was a pause in which Hagrid stared at her with his newly uncovered eye. Harry could almost hear his brain working furiously. "I've been away from my health," he said. "For your health," said Umbridge. Her eyes traveled over Hagrid's discolored and swollen face. Dragon blood dripped gently onto his waistcoat in the silence. "I see. Yeah. Yeah, said Hagrid. Bit of fresh air, you know? Yes, as gamekeeper, fresh air must be so difficult to come by, said Umbridge sweetly. The small patch of Hagrid's face that was not black or purple flashed. Well, trying to sing, you know? Mountain scenery? Said Umbridge swiftly. She knows, Harry thought desperately. Mountains? Hagrid repeated, clearly thinking fast. Nope, south of France, bit of sun and sea. Oh, I bet South France is beautiful. I would love to visit Cadior sometime. It just sounds so homey to me. Moving forth. Really, said Umbridge. You don't have much of a tan. No, well, sensitive skin, said Hagrid in it, attempting an integrated smile. Hagrid noticed that 2 of his teeth had been knocked out. Umbridge looked at him coldly. His smile faltered. Then she hoisted her hand back a little higher into the crook of her arm and said, I shall of course be informing the Minister of your late return. Right, said Hagrid, nodding. You ought to know too that as High Inquisitor it is my unfortunate but necessary duty to inspect my fellow teachers. So I dare say we shall meet again soon enough. She turned sharply and marched back to the door. You inspecting us? Said Hagrid, blankly looking at her. Oh, yes, said Umbridge softly, looking back at him with her hand on the door handle. The Ministry is determined to weed out unsatisfactory teachers, Hagrid. Good night. She left, closing the door behind her with a snap. Harry made to pull off the invisibility cloak, but Hermione seized his wrist. Not yet, she breathed in his ear. She might not be gone yet. Hagrid seemed to be thinking in the same way. He slumped across the room and pulled back the curtain an inch or so. She's going back to the castle, he said in a low voice. Blimey, inspecting people, is she? Yeah, said Harry, pulling the cloak off. Trelawney's on probation already. What sort of thing are you planning to do with us in class, Hagrid? Asked Hermione. Oh, don't you worry about that. I've got a great load of lessons planned, said Hagrid enthusiastically, scooping up his dragon steak from the table and swapping it over his eye again. I've been keeping a couple creatures saved for you earlier. You wait. There's something really special. Special in what way? Asked Hermione tentatively. I'm not saying, said Hagrid happily. I don't want to spoil the surprise. Look, Hagrid, said Hermione urgently, dropping all pretense. Professor Umbridge won't be happy at all if you bring us something to class that's too dangerous. Dangerous? Said Hagrid, looking genuinely bemused. Well, they said they won't give you anything dangerous. Really, Hagrid? I mean, alright, they can look after themselves. Hagrid, you've got to pass Umbridge's inspection. And to do that, it would really be better if she saw you teaching us how to look after Porlocks. Not to tell the difference between hogs and hedgehogs. Stuff like that, said Hermione earnestly. That's not very interesting, Hermione. I disagree. I think it would be very interesting, said Hagrid. The subs I've got much more impressive. I've been putting them on for years. Reckon I've only got the domestic herd in Britain. Hagrid, please, said Hermione, a note of real desperation in her voice. We're just looking for any excuse to get rid of teachers she thinks are too close to Dumbledore. Please, Hagrid, teach us something dull that's bound to come up in our owl. But Hagrid merely yawned. I think that's the 4th or 5th time. Moving forth. Widely and... Oh, here it comes. Yep, there it was. Just a delayed reaction. Anyway. Yawned widely and cast a one-eyed look of longing toward the vast bed in the corner. Listen, it's been a long day this night, he said, patting Hermione gently on the shoulder. So that her knees gave way and hit the floor with a thud. Oops. Oh, sorry. He pulled her back up by the neck of her robes. No, don't go worry about me. I promise you I got really good stuff planned for your lessons on back. So you lot better get back up to the castle. And don't forget to wipe the footprints out behind you. I don't know if you got through to him, said Ron a short while later when, having checked that the coast was clear, they walked back up to the castle through the thickening snow, leaving no trace behind them due to the obliteration charm Hermione was performing as they went. Then I'll go back tomorrow, said Hermione determinedly. I'll plan his lessons for him if I have to. I don't care if she throws out Trelawney, but she's not taking Hagrid. Foreshadowing. Almost. Yeah. Foreshadowing and delightfully surprising. But that is the end of this chapter. I hope you enjoyed it. Join me next week for chapter 21, The Eye of the Snake. Until then, bye! Oh, and Prisma says bye too.